Welcome back to Outcast Chronicles. We appreciate you guys joining us. We are here to just open the door to conversation about anything with no judgment. I'm David.
My name is Brian. We just want to thank you. If you like what you're hearing, please hit subscribe, hit that little bell, comment on it, interact in any way you can, because the more you interact, the more people will be able to see what's going on, and the more we'll be able to get kind of a gauge on what we need to continue to talk about. And so we really want this to be as interactive as possible. But thank you very much for joining us today. Man, I got something on my heart that I want to throw out there just to kind of start off, Dave, and just see where it goes. I don't know if you read earlier. I'm going to do a little screen share here because I pulled up the article. But there was an article, this one happens to be CNN, but it just basically says the Defense Department confirms leaked video of unidentified aerial phenomenon, which I guess is what they're calling it instead of UFOs now.
It's a UAP.
And then it shows this picture here where it's got a video. And I don't know if it's going to play the video, but of a Navy pilot took this, and they're confirming that it's actually real, which is the first time. That's a complete departure from what has been the norm for the Pentagon. You know, that they would just not even talk about it. And so when we look down in here, it says there have been a number of reports of unauthorized and or unidentified aircraft entering various military controlled ranges and designated airspaces in recent years, the Navy said in 2019. Last year, the Pentagon released 3 videos showing unidentified aerial phenomena, which it's strange that you're not hearing hardly anything about this. Clips that the U.S. Navy had previously confirmed were real. So this is a complete departure from what the Pentagon has done in the past, right? Which is they've never, confirmed any of this. They've always done a ton of cover up on anything that was unexplained. So UFOs, what do you think? Are they real? Aren't they? What are they?
What are they? Well, I don't know. I have no idea.
Dirty.
I've always enjoyed the thought of that. What would be an interesting topic is believing in that and still believing in God.
Okay.
Did he create more than us? Some of the argument has been, alien came here, dropped some DNA in the water, turned it into a vaccine. No, I'm just kidding. They brought some DNA, they put it in the water, and then all of a sudden microbes grew, and that's where we came from, not Adam and Eve coming out of the ground and molded us. I do believe that from a scientific point of view, from everything that I've ever studied, that we are made up of the very same compounds that flow in the cosmos. Hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, everything that's in the dirt, everything that's in space is in us, which to me, it doesn't chase me away from God. It makes it more realistic that God formed us out of the dust of the ground, which was created from space when he spoke life into existence. People call it the Big Bang. I tell people, cool, if that's what you want. Science, it's funny, the more you read about that, science is really questioning the Big Bang. There's a lot of scientists who have now come to not the faith, but they have come to an acknowledgement that there is something more at work than Big Bang.
Well, so, when you think about the what is it, the 4 main theories of the Big Bang, 3 of the 4 have been completely disproven.
Yes, exactly.
And one is very suspect. And so, quantum physics has really opened up a lot.
Yeah.
That the funny thing is we're still teaching them in schools, which I
Of
think
course.
is
Well, schools are
crazy.
so archaic, man.
Oh my gosh. I mean, yeah,
We're
we used
we're
to use
50 years
textbooks.
behind in the education
Yeah, I mean, we
because
used to use
it's
textbooks that were, 20 years old, but now it
right,
seems like we could do a little better now that we don't even use textbooks. I mean,
right.
everything's
You don't
being
even need
taken offline.
textbooks. You can get stuff online,
Right.
and it's just, but they refuse to do that. But it's like most scientists, I won't say most because I don't know, but from what I've read, a lot of scientists have like, there has to be something bigger than us controlling what's going on. I've read that personally from different scientists. They won't say God, they just say it's something. It's not just order out of chaos. It's just like a wise man that I once knew very well always gave me the analogy of, at that time, Rolex watches were one of the most expensive watches around. And he was just like, I would love for somebody to give me a Rolex watch, smash it, put it in a box, come back in 1,000 years and see if it put itself back together. So, the whole point was, can you get order out of chaos like that? The Big Bang to me is no different than God saying, let there be light. So that's just a controlled Big Bang. It wasn't no accident, some gases blowing up, and then all of a sudden you got planets. When you really study the Bible, the thing that has fascinated me, when you get out of the realm of religion and you study it, pretty much stuff that I've read, Hebrew, Aramaic, or Greek, when they talk about heaven or the heavens, when you look the words up, they actually mean the cosmos, spiritual realms. They don't hesitate to say, yeah, this is, when we say well, you say cosmos in church, man, and oh, you're new age. I mean, it's like you can't even say that, but that's what they meant when they said that. It was from the cosmos.
Well, I think religion has really, you know, tainted the way we see the Bible, and so we have I don't even know what the word would be to use, religiousized. I don't know how to say that in a different way,
Well, if not,
but
then that's a new one. We coined it here. Thank you
right
very
there we
much,
go, right
Outcast
here,
Chronicles.
religiousized. You have been religiousized, but but what it
Yes.
is, and so we take these terms and we take the different aspects and we've made it into this weird religious way of looking at things, when actually the Bible actually talks about visitors from another realm. When it
Oh,
talks about angels, when it talks about
demons.
demons,
Yep.
it's talking about beings that came from a realm other than this realm. And so if to tie back to UFOs, you know, I really like what Steven Spielberg did when he broke it out in the last Indiana Jones movie, the Crystal Skulls.
Oh yeah, right.
Is he took the whole thing of aliens and brought it into, it's aliens from another dimension, not aliens from another planet. And for me, I don't believe there's any aliens out on another planet. I don't think that there's any other life in this universe. Uh, but the Bible is full of, and every ancient civilization has record of some form of beings that came from
The sky.
above. It just
Yes,
says above, but
definitely.
so like the Native Americans, they call them the sky people. You can go to Egypt and they'll talk about the gods, right?
Yep.
That and they had the head of Horus and all this stuff. So there's all these different things, but there are actual pictures of flying like saucers that are,
Right.
in the hieroglyphs.
Yep. Yep.
And
I mean,
so
even Maya and Aztec. I mean, they're in their writings and they scratch that stuff into stone, bro. Like that was real to them. So it's like, how can you be that ancient, if you will, thousands of years ago, and have that concept of, I've seen stuff, drawings with, they look like they had space helmets on, just very interesting stuff. Like you said, they look like a spacecraft. So,
and the Bible talks about, when certain people saw God's appearance, that they talk about a wheel within a wheel, and that's, I mean,
oh,
it's
that's
like, what is
good.
that? A wheel within a
Yeah,
wheel,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it sounds like a spaceship,
Yep.
but so I guess it comes down to, because here's what I don't want to do. I don't want to go into this area where it's like, okay, all religions are just based upon the fact that aliens came to this earth and
Correct.
they actually did plant us here, and then we were just so dumb we made them all gods. But um, because what you're doing is you're talking about these beings that came to civilizations that were actually pretty advanced. I mean, they weren't Neanderthals. I mean, these were
Right.
people who had engineering, they had language, they had text, they had the ability to do all these things where they could record this. So they weren't that primitive. Now,
Right.
obviously they didn't have cars and stuff like that, but they weren't that primitive. And so, to say that, oh my gosh, you see, they were just so dumb that they just called them gods. I think the Bible says some really interesting things. When I was in Bible college, this was in like 1992. I had a religion, I mean, not a religion, Revelations class. It was on the book of Revelation.
Oh, okay.
And the professor, his name was Delron Shirley, he was talking through this whole thing of about aliens. And he said this, and I thought he was absolutely nuts when I heard it the first time. I was like, psst, you know. But he said that what he believed is that the devil was going to show up as an alien to convince people to accept him, and that's how he was going to set up his reign as the Antichrist on the earth, and that was going to come through showing up as an alien, you know.
Mm.
And I was like, but you're seeing more and more stuff come out now that is so interesting in the way that it's breaking things down. And when you really look at it, that if it's not an alien from another planet, it's an alien from another dimension, it's the same thing.
Right.
That's what demons are. They're beings from other dimension that were cast out. And when you talk about angels, they are beings from another dimension. When Paul talks about being caught up into the third heaven,
Right.
he's talking about going into a third realm above our realm.
Yep.
And I find that all fascinating. I mean, quantum physics now talks about the fact that there are at least 11 dimensions.
Yep.
That the only way that the things that mathematically make sense in computation is when you add these additional dimensions. And so they're sure that there's at least 11 dimensions, and only 4 of them are knowable. But over 400 years ago, Dave, there was a Bible scholar by the name of Nachmanides, who from the book of Revelation, I'm sorry, I'm stuck on Revelation, from the book of Genesis,
Okay.
he deduced that there were at least 10 dimensions,
From
4
Genesis?
knowable from Genesis. So our science is 400 years behind a Bible scholar.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's kind of fascinating to me.
Well,
So I, for me, it's like, I believe that there's such thing as aliens, because if you read the Bible, you see them, just not the way we think of these green creatures who came from outer space, came from Mars. I don't believe there's no creatures on Mars, but there's other dimensions, and there are beings.
Hollywood has manipulated that very
Oh
well.
my gosh, yeah.
Yeah. Because even like monsters and all of that, I mean, it can demon activity is, The Exorcist. I mean, it's
Right.
Hollywood, but demons are real, man. I mean, you can't deny that.
A lot of people do.
A lot of people do. Yep. There is activity. It's just like, the Bible talks about heaven. Paul talks about the third heaven. I'm assuming God can count. So if there's the first and the third, I'm assuming there's a second, which opens the door to what you're saying. So it's just like Daniel. Like, God, man, I need some help down here, dude. I'm praying. And, his stuff was delayed so many days. And then when the angel finally showed up and appeared to him, He was like, bro, man, we heard it. God heard you right away, but man, I had to fight my way here. So what does that mean? You know what I'm saying? Like you could look up in the clouds. That's where I think we get really confused to think you can look up and go dimension. You
Right,
have to
right.
change the way you think on quantum physics to where it's a whole different realm. I mean, we could get into, parallel universes. I mean, they got a
That's
lot of studies
yeah.
about that.
I mean, I don't know about parallel universes. I mean, but other dimensions, I absolutely, believe in. I think that they're all over in the Bible. I think it's interesting. So we live in a 4-dimensional existence right now.
Right.
A lot of people think it's only 3, but it was Einstein that taught us that time is actually a physical, and so it's another dimension. So we live within time, and so we are 4-dimensional beings. But then let's just say, because they say there's 11, let's just say that there's 12. Let's say that there's one more. Okay. So, and this is just me. This is just my idea. Okay. So I didn't read this anywhere. This is just me thinking based upon the word and stuff like that. Right. So 4 of them make up our dimension. Well, what if the next dimension up is another 4? And then the next dimension above that is another 4. Well, that's 12. And so
Right.
somehow we are in a dimension, and the Bible teaches us that the reality that we live in right now is a dimension within another dimension, because it says that God created it for us and that one day we will leave it. So that tells us that we will come out of this dimension into the next, at least maybe the third, I don't know. And so when you talk about the idea of the angels and the demons, maybe they're in that second heaven, that second dimension, that and that's the dimension in between us and God, and that's where the angels and the demons wrestle over us. I don't know. But I mean, you see evidence of that in the Bible. I don't think that's far-fetched.
Well, I've always loved the verse, you are in the world, but you are not of the world. And that's always made me think dimensionally. The Bible talks about us being predestined. It talked about us knowing us before the foundations of the world. And I have actually boldly, carefully have taught some of my youth about God knew you before you existed.
Hmm.
That's in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And so if God knew you before you got here, you getting here was a plan and a purpose. That you're not here by mistake. That's why I believe, like I always tell people, man, 2 greatest times of your life: the day you were born, the day you figure out why. But if you're in the world, we're in this dimension, but we're not of it. So it's like, to me, he formed us in the womb. He knew us. He predestined us. We were called predestined. He knew us before the foundations of the world, and yet we are now here. So if he knew us before we got here, that says a lot to what you're saying. Like that's why I always teach people. I'm a firm believer. I don't care what anybody says. You're not here by mistake. I feel bad for how some people end up here. I've had to deal with women that have been raped. I've had to deal with kids who have struggled because they were a product of rape, or they were a product of incest, or they were a product of a one-night stand. And you leave a kid thinking I'm a mistake. And that's horrific to me. But when I get to teach them about predestination, a mistake would be God going, what am I going to do with this dude? You weren't part of the plan. God's like on the throne going, okay, what am I going to do with Bobby, man? You ain't shocking God. Now, what I have to qualify is that God by no means condones rape, abuse, incest. Um, by no means does God accept that, or that's part of his plan. It's not. So it gets very controversial. We could probably get a couple people on this podcast and we could go at it. But my whole thing is, even if I don't fully got it together, my whole point is to let people know that they're not a mistake. And that's important. So, but what happens is a lot of the kids that I've dealt with, which would be considered labeled as at-risk youth for the last 5 years, you see their countenance change when they grab a hold. You can see some, I'm just sitting there teaching them, and all of a sudden they're like, I'm not a mistake. You have a purpose for being here. Jeremiah 29:11. God has thoughts towards you. He has plans for you. He has plans to prosper you, to give you a hope and expected end. His thoughts for you are good and not evil. So it's like, to understand you're not a mistake, because God had to know you beforehand. Where was that? That's one thing I've always wanted to ask people. So if God predestined you and he knew you before the foundations of the world, how does that work? I've never heard any church address that ever in any message.
If I could take a shot at it.
Yeah, please.
And so if we're in a realm right now that is the realm of time, and so we are in time, and time is linear, right?
Yes.
And so you talk about drawing a timeline and started here and ended here, or however you want to look at that. God is outside of time. And so if you're somebody who is outside of time, Chuck Missler was a Bible scholar who he broke it down this way, which I thought was phenomenal. He said, think of it like a parade. Okay. And so if you're at a parade, like let's talk about like make it a Rose Bowl parade, or I would go to Traverse City and they have a parade there that they do in the Cherry Festival, which is really, really long.
Oh,
And it
okay.
wipes me out. I can't stand parades. But anyway, but when you got kids, sometimes
Right.
you go
Yeah.
anyway. And so you're sitting there on 2nd Street or something, right? And they're going by and you're seeing them go by in a linear manner, right? That's
Yeah.
how we are, because we're in time. So we see things happen as they happen, right? As they pass in front of us. But if God is outside of time, he's like the person who's in a helicopter. And see, the person who's in a helicopter can look at the parade and they can see the beginning and the end at the same time.
Right.
They can see everywhere in between. And I think that to me is the way God knew us before, because he could look at one point and see all of time and be like, oh, Brian just showed up right there. Yeah, I know. I knew him before he ever was created.
Yeah.
Because he stands outside of time. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so you want me to mess you up even worse?
Yeah. Yeah. No, keep going.
Check this
Actually,
out.
I'm kind of liking this, man.
So think about this. So if God stands outside of time, and when you die, you leave time, right? Then what about the question? Because this is like an age-old question that we hear about, especially Jehovah's Witnesses bring it up, right? Like, where do you go when you die?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And what happens until the resurrection? And people are like, well, you go to heaven, or you're in the grave, or you're whatever. But see, the problem with that is that we're still thinking in 4-dimensional logic. And so at the moment that I leave the parade and I go to the helicopter, do you see what I'm saying? Go to that other dimension. You could leave 10 years later. Like my father died in 2005. So 15 years ago, right? And at that moment, well, 16 years ago, at that moment, he went to be with Jesus. Okay. Now, it is possible for me, maybe 25 years from now, to die, and we arrive at the same moment, because we're not in time. We're exiting time. into a realm that's outside of time. So when the Bible says in the book of Revelation that there appeared in heaven a great multitude of in white, that could be all of the saints the moment everyone died, no matter where they were in the timeline, showing up at the same time, same moment. I shouldn't say time, that's a bad use. Same moment.
Yeah, moment
before the
right.
throne. And so to me, my dad died 16 years ago. But if I die now and he died 16 years ago, it'll seem like we arrived at the same moment.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
That's
some
trippy,
serious thought.
right?
Yeah.
You know, but to me, it answers the question, you know, like, where do you go? Because the Bible doesn't really talk about it.
Right.
You know, and so maybe it doesn't talk about it because it's irrelevant. It's just that we are thinking in our 4-dimensional minds and not thinking, you know, whereas quantum physics has kind of opened this up a little bit more.
Yes, it has.
So,
and they've not discounted God. That's the cool thing with some of this.
No, actually, Dave, quantum physics is confirming God.
Yep.
You know, when you talk about I'm trying to remember what it's called. I wasn't really prepared for this conversation. I think it's the Planck theory, which is there's a particle that so I was taught in school, and you were probably taught the same thing when they taught us the idea of infinity, that you could have a line that could go out from this point both directions and go forever and never end, right? And that's infinity.
Yes.
And in the same way, you could have a line that's about this long, and then you could cut it in half, and then you can cut it in half, and you could keep going. And if you had a blade sharp enough, you could keep cutting forever. I remember them teaching me that. But what we found out through quantum physics is that that's not true. That there's actually a measurement of matter that is so small that once you cut it, again, the last time you cut it, it immediately becomes part of everything. In other words, you can't go any further than that one particle. And you know, the actual scientist who discovered that, he was an atheist, and he killed himself once he found that out.
What?
Because what it says then, because how can you have a smallest particle, a digit, right? Digital. When you talk about the computer screen that we're looking at right now, that's digital, right? It's got pixels, and all the pixels are the same size. So our reality is made of pixels that are these smallest pieces of matter, and they're all the same size. Yes. How can that happen by accident?
Right.
It can't. It's an improbability. And so from that standpoint, then quantum physics is actually confirming what the Bible said, which is that God created this universe, this realm, to be a virtual reality for us to live in, to be transformed into his image. And that one day we were going to exit this reality, you know, and that we would be judged. And so all this stuff is lining up, and it's lining up in such an amazing way that, but people are so caught in their paradigm of, you know, their atheism and evolution and all this stuff, that they can't see that it's lining up with what the Bible said all along.
Yeah.
And that's what trips me out, because I'm reading it and I'm going, whoa, that confirms the Bible. Oh my gosh, that says exactly what the Bible says. You know, and you're hearing some of this stuff, and it blows me away. And so when we talk about aliens, just to bring it all the way back around, I mean, talking about UFOs, absolutely, I believe in them. I believe that they're true. I don't think they are what we think they are. You know, and we can dive deeper into that. What's that?
I would go with that. I don't think it's what we think it is. But, you know, I mean, you got tons of people, you know, you got Roswell, you got Area 51, 52, whatever it is.
51.
Yeah. And so that's, you got people that say, well, we have them, you know, that there are aliens here, that there are, you know, and that gets very controversial because demons, it's like they don't have a physical body.
Demons don't.
They're a being, right?
But
now the angels do. Angels do, yeah.
So are demons and fallen angels the same thing?
Right. And I would have a tendency to disagree with that.
So we're
Yeah.
going to have to come back and dive back into that, because this can get really deep. But I do want to recommend this. This is a book. It's called Alien Encounters, and it's by Chuck Missler and Mark Eastman. And if you want to learn more about that, this is really good. So I just wanted to throw that out there, because man, I've been diving into this. I'm telling you, there's more out there than what we know, and this explains a lot. So I just wanted to put that plug out there. But thanks so much for joining us for Outcast Chronicles. I know we got into some weird stuff. We're probably going to get into weirder stuff, to be honest with you, because we're just here to talk about stuff and create a safe, sacred space for tough conversations to take place. So thanks so much. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that bell so you can see the next time we load something up, you'll get a notification. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you.